Thank you, Speaker, and I am pleased to lead for the opposition on the Transport Legislation Amendment Bill of 2025, and I want to be clear that the opposition will not be opposing the legislation, but I will make a few brief remarks in relation to this bill. First of all, we thank the Minister for their engagement and briefing to get across the details of this legislation. It is a miscellaneous bill, and as is the case with miscellaneous bills, it covers a range of matters and relevant legislation changes, language and various other amendments to other bills. And I just wanted to go through a few of the other pieces of legislation, just having picked up the Act, just to highlight the breadth of what is covered. In passing, this bill will make amendment in part to the Criminal Procedure Regulation of 2017, the Local Government Act 1993, the Pipelines Act, the Public Spaces Unattended Property Regulation, the Roads Act, the Rural Fires Act, the Transport Administration General Regulation, the Water Act, the Water Management Regulation, and various other parts of water regulations as well as the Aware Super Act, Environmental Planning and Assessment Regulation, the Marine Pollution Act, State Authorities Non-Contributory Superannuation Act, and various other acts as well. I make that point, Speaker, to highlight that for all of the debate and discussion that comes through this legislation, there isn't substantive change that is helping commuters in their day-to-day commute. It's very much one of language, one of style, but not so much one of substance. But I don't want to speak in too much detail about that. This is about the current bill that's before us, and I just wanted to make the observation that there are many, many more things in transport that need to be a priority for this Parliament, things that I and many of my colleagues have spoken about. So let me just go through a few details that we do think are worthy of note. Firstly, as the Parliamentary Secretary mentioned, the speed limit changes to work sites. We note that the changes to the Road Act of 1993 to implement the government's election commitment regarding changes to speed limits at road construction sites where no work is occurring and it is safe to do so. The opposition accepts that the government took this particular policy to the election, and therefore, in principle, it should be allowed to implement that policy. That is, of course, the mandate that you seek at an election. The opposition also believes that there should be sufficient communication regarding these particular changes with the public. And I've really been struck by some of the crazy misinformation and conspiracy theories that do sometimes capture the attention of the public when it comes to changes to the road rules. And so I think that in this particular detail, it is important that that is made known to the general public, and I might invite the Parliamentary Secretary in her reply to elaborate how, if at all, the government plans to make sure that is clear so that the public know those changes are coming into effect when that happens and what that means for them in practical terms, just to avoid that miscommunication and misunderstanding that can routinely happen with changes to the road rules. Because we know that road rules are best when they are clear, concise and consistent, and so of course the devil will be in the detail of what the government says in relation to how those changes will take effect. Because the last thing that any motorist or family needs is a lack of clarity on what the speeds are in place or the conditions that they are expected to adhere to when driving. We also note that the Minister in the other place made comments about stakeholder consultation prior to the publishing of the new standard to be created as a result of this legislation. And so we would ask the government to ensure that that can be communicated to the public on where and how the finalised standards end up, noting that some matters within the standard will be of a technical nature. The opposition, in thinking about these matters, did consider moving amendments regarding a report or a review into how the particular policy will work, and we'd suggest that the government enact some sort of review or other mechanism to enable transparency on how the policy operates in the community. And again, I might invite the Parliamentary Secretary to make some comments with respect to that as well. But on balance, we will leave it to the government to determine how they choose to deal with those details. I'll also make some brief comments in relation to the Community Improvement District Bill changes, to briefly touch on changes to the Community Improvement District Act of 2025. This was something we dealt with earlier in this Parliament. And the opposition notes that the bill makes clarifying amendments to the Act to ensure the original policy intent of the government is enacted. The opposition previously supported the legislation when it was brought to Parliament earlier this year, And the opposition, while supportive of the CID scheme, is still interested to see how the regulatory scheme will operate in real communities and with real businesses. So if there is any further explanation that is able to be provided there, that would be welcome. In relation to the amendments, we accept the explanation provided by the government and in briefings to the opposition that these are to reflect the intent of the previous legislation. Regarding other amendments to existing legislation as outlined by the Minister in the other place in his second reading speech, the opposition is satisfied with the explanations that the Minister has provided, and as I said at the start and will reiterate again, the opposition will not be opposing the legislation. I commend it to the House.